Hi, everyone. Welcome to our People Analytics webinar. I'm Serap, founder of Uplift. As Uplift, we are a global recruitment company, and People Analytics is our daily life. So one of our favorite topic in HR. And I'm very excited to have our webinar on this topic, and together with an industry expert. And we have a remarkable guest from Australia, Greg Newman. Welcome, Greg. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Serap. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to take part.
Thank you. So Greg, let me introduce Greg a little bit, but of course I will ask him also for a quick introduction. So he has over 20 years of experience in HR HCM solutions, and he has a successful track record of leading complex, innovative people analytics projects across the world. And he currently is the director with people analytics responsibility at Deloitte Australia. And Greg, you and I talk about your career, and you have very exciting careers. You worked in many different locations, different industries. Can you please introduce yourself quickly to our audience today?
Awesome. Yeah. I started off my life in New Zealand and pretty quickly moved to Australia, where I started. I did a human resources degree, but quickly realized that I was probably not nice enough to really be a HR person. So I moved out of HR into HR technology. And I spent 15 years building big global HR systems with SAP. And I did that work firstly in Australia, then in the United Kingdom, spent a little bit of time in Brazil, and eventually moved to Singapore, where I joined a startup. And that's where I really focused on people analytics. What I realized though was we were helping in the SAP world, we were helping customers spend hundreds of millions of dollars on HR technology that was gathering massive amounts of data that no one ever looked at. And so I chose to just focus on HR data and getting value out of HR data. Firstly, in a startup where we did organizational network analytics. So we measured human relationships within organizations and used that to do things like identify high potential employees' behaviors, measure how inclusive teams were, lots of really interesting stuff. We took that from Singapore to the USA, where we became famous but not wealthy. And that was really the intention in a startup, is always to become wealthy. So after a few years in the US, I joined Deloitte USA, helping to really operationalize analytics. So getting HR analytics away from science experiments and really embedded into processes and creating business impact. And then about 3 years ago, we moved back to Australia after 22 years away.
Wow.
And I set up the people analytics team here in Deloitte, Australia. So we're a bunch of nerds doing cool science, nerdy data projects all over Australia.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, thank you. And before we start, by the way, I want to mention one housekeeping rule. If you want to ask any questions, our participants, please write them in the chat. We will be able to see them, and we'll try to answer along the way. But I would like to start, Greg, with one famous saying, like, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. I love that. And so as HR professionals, we want to be more strategic. We want to solve business problems together with business leaders. And of course, people analytics is one of the way to enable this problem solving. And I would like to ask you, especially, I'm sure most of HR folks think that, okay, how can we effectively solve these problems? Where should we start? What are the initial steps that we need to take? Maybe you can just share your idea and maybe framework with us to help.
Yeah, and really, I'd first like to defend people's opinions. Like, we come with experience in industry, experience from education, experience from practice, and that experience and opinions is really valuable. So I still like to think of AI as augmenting intelligence, and a lot of the work we should do, I think we should always aim to help people make better decisions, but not to remove the decision making. So I think a lot of people are afraid AI is going to take their job and it's going to remove the need for managers. I think actually we're going to turbocharge the ability for managers to make better decisions faster, with more evidence, less biases. So I think we will be strengthening people's ability to bring opinions to work rather than replacing it.
Yeah. And do you also have any like case study, an example, like how people analytics can be used to solve this one business problem?
Yeah. So the first thing is I always try and pitch my solutions as if I'm trying to convince my dad to do something, right? So my dad is a 78-year-old white man, and he's very set in his ways, and he has a very definite opinions on things. So when we're trying to convince someone of the benefits of using data to make a better decision, then having that ability to tell the story and to bring someone along on the process to revealing the data and revealing the finding, I think is really, really important. Some of my favorite projects that we've done recently, that they're not always really complicated, but simple things like understanding the impact of people who attend a leadership development program. Traditional learning metrics are: did someone attend the course? Did they complete it on time? What was their pass rate? But we moved on from that to say, people who attend this leadership development program, are they better leaders? So, are they more likely to get promoted? Are their employees more likely to be retained? Are their employees more engaged? So, we build a really compelling argument for investment in a leadership development program by looking at the downstream impact of those who went on the leadership program. We also compared it to those who didn't, and we're able to say, people who led, who attended this program, their turnover rate was lower, their chance of their employees being promoted was higher. Like, they were exhibiting significantly better leadership behaviors after this training. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of things that I love to do. It doesn't always have to be big and complex. It doesn't always have to be a predictive model. Sometimes
No.
it's just the right amount of detail for the right person.
Yeah, no, that's a great example. And I continue to hear from HR folks that using people analytics in learning and development field is more challenging than recruitment or performance management because there are more data points. But in learning and development, of course, as you mentioned, we have several like training type of data, like number of hours, etc. But I guess the important thing is to bring this people data and maybe business data as well, like through, of course, engagement surveys, but also like revenue numbers, I don't know, other KPIs, etc., in specific field of leadership.
Yep. Yep. And we try and keep this humble. Like, we're not doing an exhaustive model that proves causation. We are
Yeah.
from the start saying all we're looking for is correlation. And are you comfortable with working with this information knowing that it's just correlation? Most people are, because they don't want to invest in the 6 months of extra work that it would take to prove that it's causation. So I think by keeping expectations reasonable, then showing the link to business outcomes isn't that complicated.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I want to also, remind us to the sequence of people analytics. So, for example, first of all, we want to solve the business problems, and we need to use people analytics data. And to have accurate people data and maintain the data, we need to have right HR technology or systems in place. But in order to select the right technology system, so what we need to do, so we need to have maybe some criteria in better decision making in this because it's a big investment as well.
Yeah.
So do you have any experience on this, or do you have any suggestions to HR folks like how we should
Yeah,
select?
yeah. So definitely the starting point we always use is going problem led. So not looking at what's available on the market, not looking at what data we could gather, but actually talking to HR and hopefully the business, understanding what their strategic priorities are, what their KPIs are, and increasingly what their burning platforms are. Like, what are the really big problems that have come up quickly? By looking at that demand side, rather than technology and products and cool, funky things, you can quickly work out probably your first few years is going to be establishing a core set of reporting data, providing stable and up to date monthly dashboards, and solving a few small problems, but building that as a stable base to then start to do the exciting stuff. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's really important to start with conversations with the consumers of the data and the customers.
Yeah, involving others, right? So not only deciding based on HR or financial figures only.
Yeah, and we're also always trying to follow where there's an established budget. A lot of early people analytics teams would gather a whole lot of data, sit in a back corner of the office for 6 months, and find all these amazing problems. The problem was they found problems that nobody owned, no one had a KPI for, no one really cared about. And so they didn't get traction to solve those problems. So having that pause and gathering that insight first, I think, is critical.
Yeah, totally. And by the way, we received one question from Zeynep. I would like to read that. Thanks, Zeynep, for the question. And developing applications within the company by observing human behavior can be challenging because it's an analysis based only on human observation and interpretation. It may be more meaningful to see this in an analytic form along with our observations. Is there any tool that we can use, or do you recommend anything for this?
So
That's a great question.
if I understand the question correctly, observing employee behavior, it's
Yeah.
something that we did in my time at TrustSphere by looking at email metadata for massive organizations. So we would look at how people built relationships, how the communication patterns, how they exerted influence, how they collaborated. One thing that became really apparent was that we needed a denominator for it. We needed to know if this behavior was positive or negative. And often that changed based on the role. So, for example, having a massive network in one role may be great because you can help solve problems quickly. If you're another person with a massive network, then it may be over collaboration and you may be at risk of burnout. So whenever we observe people, trying to put a performance layer on it to understand whether that behavior is desired or not desired,
Mhm.
I think that's critical to then be able to use it and change it.
Yeah, yeah, and definitely organizational network analysis. That's how we call our employee listening systems, I guess. These are really good tools, and you can actually search as well online. Like there are really nice examples of the results, like where you can use, especially in the diverse inclusion topics as well. Promotions, like how to give promotion to which person, etc. And it shows really nice network of people, like a real data, right? So not
Yeah.
only like organizational charts type of thing, but real data, like how people connected to each other.
Yeah, and it was something that we did at TrustSphere that I loved, which was really trying to get a proxy for belonging. So me
Mhm.
and a team, how do other people in the team interact with me? Do they communicate with me as much as my colleagues? Can we see a pattern of behavior, for employees from diverse backgrounds or different needs? And we could see that some people were being treated differently. And it's only one signal. We need to add context to it. We need to, again, see whether it's positive or negative. But the cool thing with a lot of this observed behavior is that our traditional HR data set is really stable. It
Mhm.
doesn't change very much. There's not that many signals coming through. When we start looking at the way people work and collaborate, we can quickly see the impact combined with some employee listening stuff. We can see the impact of how the organization is communicating, its priorities, changes in its culture. All those signals pop out much faster.
Yeah, exactly. And especially looking ahead to 2024, I can't believe we are almost at the middle of the February. What new technologies and trending topics do you see, Greg, in people analytics field?
So I think I'm contractually obligated to say Gen AI is going to be the hot topic, but and that's exciting. But what I think people aren't thinking yet is for us to be able to build a large language model on HR data or to use these amazing tools and technologies, we're going to need some really solid, up to date, complete, and accurate HR data. We're going to need to have strong governance processes on top. We're going to need controls on top of our HR data. We're going to need owners who can authorize the use of it. And all of that's the preparation for this analysis to be done. After that, we're then going to need someone in HR who says, I am comfortable ethically with us doing this type of analysis. I am comfortable legally with us doing this type of analysis. And then someone who's going to be able to show how these models work and defend them, because employees are going to disagree with the assessments or the interpretations or the promotions. So as HR, we're going to have to really quickly upskill our ability to talk about large language models and about advanced AI and be able to defend it, or it's too dangerous for us to use it. We'll just get in trouble. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's for me what everyone should be working on this year, the foundational stuff to enable 2025 them to start doing the stuff at scale.
Yeah, and starting with like basic steps to strengthen that foundation, and then of course build on top. And
Yeah.
I also see that the HR skill set is also changing. That with this new technologies, not only like classic HR competencies will be necessary, but also, I mean, of course, they are still necessary, but we still need to build and develop ourselves further.
And one of the big roles we're seeing growing in demand at the moment is the data translator, because we have some amazing data scientists, some amazing nerds who can do cool stuff with data. We then have a bunch of aging, non technical HR people, and that data translator role connects those two people together, speaks the language of HR, but understands the math and the science. And I think that's the big growth area that all HR analytics and even reporting teams are going to need to build to be able to deliver the insights that people are starting to demand.
Yeah, and actually, more and more, I see people analytics teams are built in organizations, and the companies are investing more and more on people analytics teams. However, all HR folks should have this analytical skills, as you mentioned, like the data translator type of skills. So, how can we develop ourselves in this field? Like, what do you have any suggestions, recommendations?
Yeah, I think the way we see it working is when people take a natural curiosity and start to solve problems that are meaningful for them. We do see some successful data fluency, data literacy kind of at scale, teaching everyone how math works and all that kind of thing. But where we see people develop a passion for it is when they get, maybe they're excited by learning and development and they start working with the reporting team to solve a really small, really tactical problem that they have. But then they see that suddenly they've got data to back up an assumption or data to convince a manager. And then they see that this is going to help them do their job better. So they go back more often, they increase the demand, they ask for more complex analysis. So I really see it as organic. You know, we all learned subjects at school that we didn't apply and we don't remember it all. And I worry that a lot of the formal data literacy training is just forgotten because it's not being used. So I think it's that building on curiosity and then scaling up from there.
Yeah, definitely. And we shouldn't be the expert in statistics to be really like data analytics driven person. So that's why, yeah, definitely I would suggest to start some steps to build like trial and error as well, like using data to see like how you can approach the business problems. That really helps.
Also, this, sorry to jump in, but the storytelling layer is really
Mm.
important. As we start to, you know, we all know those people who put some numbers in an Excel spreadsheet and slap it on a PowerPoint and go, here's where we are. But what a busy executive usually needs is, from all of that information, tell me the three things that I need to take action on this month. And then we were talking about workers' compensation this week. We've found that the easiest way to get access, to get improvement on focus and workers' compensation is to tell really personal stories about people who got injured at work, to not talk about the amount we're spending at a big high level, but bring the story down and make it human and then drive it from an emotional level. It's all backed up by numbers, but you need to pull on the heartstrings as well.
Exactly, exactly. And I told you as well, I think the story that when I was working at Toyota in HR department, we were really data driven and we were preparing KPI reports and building the stories as well, like to solve the business problems. And my manager, and we were preparing an A3 format report. And my manager told me that, Serap, you should prepare this report, something like if you lose this report somewhere, and if you like older woman, man, like your grandparents find this report, they should understand what you are talking about. So they should understand the meaning. So I think that's a kind of criteria that we need to keep in mind to keep things simple, right?
It's similar to the way I pitch my ideas to my dad, right? I love my dad,
Yes,
but
exactly.
he's a nerd. And so I need to bring it in a way that excites and interests him.
It's a good
Yeah,
test.
we need to know our audience.
Yeah, exactly. And we have one more question, Greg, from Zoe. What do you think are the top three challenges in ANZ people analytics world? And also, just curiosity, what is or are your famous favorite analytical tools? Thanks, Zoe.
Um, wow. Was the first one hot trends?
Yes, the three challenges.
Oh,
In
three challenges. Sorry, the three challenges.
grand
Um,
favorite one.
I think the first challenge is middle-aged white men. It's really hard to convince white men in their 50s and 60s to believe in data. I can't wait for a new generation of leaders to come into organizations who are more willing to act on data. Um, Another big thing is that as HR, we still talk to the business in HR terms: engagement, well-being, belonging, diversity. And the business talks about cost, revenue, profitability. So I think one of the big challenges we have is learning to tell our stories in their language, and also convincing them of the benefits of learning a little bit about our language. Um, the third challenge I would say is really about uh, convincing people to do the investment in the fundamental stuff. Everyone needs a great central data warehouse where they can access data quickly, where they can run quality checks on their data. But that doesn't sound very exciting to HR teams. So we see a lot of people struggling to get that approval. But without that warehouse in place, it's really hard to build products. It's really hard to scale the impact. So I guess they're the three top challenges. What was the second part of the question?
What is your favorite, most favorite analytical tool or tools?
Microsoft Excel. Like, for sure. And I'm not a data scientist, right? I'm the lucky guy who connects amazing data scientists to sometimes fluffy HR people. And my team run all sorts of different technology. I don't have a preference on, SAP versus Workday, Tableau versus Power BI. It's just about knowing what is the most effective tool to answer the question for a customer as quickly as possible. But what we're increasingly saying is in a repeatable manner. And that's where Excel falls down, right? Excel's awesome at a quick and dirty PowerPoint slide for a PowerPoint presentation, a graph. But it's then next month you have to build it from scratch again. So looking at what can we do to automate processes, automate data flows and translations, so that next time someone asks that question, the data's already prepared and ready to roll.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and definitely there are many technologies out there, but I guess we need to select the most effective and easiest one to use. I also want to ask you, Greg, about ethics that you mentioned, ethics and privacy concerns. And last month, we also did a global research on HR professionals and candidates to analyze the AI impact in recruitment world. So we gathered lots of data points, and one of the points that was mentioned as a potential concern was ethics and privacy. So, how, as HR leaders, of course, we are looking from that perspective. But what ethical considerations or privacy concerns should we prioritize or take care of, and especially how can HR teams navigate for these potential pitfalls?
So I use a very simple measure. Early on in my career, we ended up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal under the heading "New Ways Your Employer is Spying on You." And that was pretty terrifying because some of our clients found out they were using our technology after they were featured in this Wall Street Journal article. So that question that I ask myself every time we're going to do something is, would I be happy for this project to end up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal? And would our CEO be proud if this was shown and published this way? Because I've seen what happens when they're not proud, and it's not a phone call you want to receive. So I think it's that crystal clear thinking around, is this going to benefit our employees positively? Would we tell our employees we're doing it? It's something that I know more and more companies are saying, we're not comfortable building attrition models unless we tell our employees the results of them. Because if I work out that there's a high risk Serap's going to leave the organization, so I spend a little more on training, get a few more manager one-on-ones with her, and she suddenly thinks, well, everybody loves me, she should probably know it's because actually we identified you were likely to leave, and so we're trying to retain you. So I think there's a lot of good questions we should ask ourselves, and we're seeing more companies give that a structure around a privacy and ethics charter, which is something David Green and Insight 222 have written a lot on. But it's just a document that says, this is how we will maintain data. This is how we will share data. And it's not policies and procedures. Organizations should have a risk management team who document that. This is more of a practical guide that anyone in HR or the science team should be able to read to work out whether the work they want to do is within the bounds that the organization is comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. And especially regarding this resignation prediction, I read some case studies from large companies like HP, Cisco. And do you see that this is happening in most of large corporations?
In a lot of ways, it's the first thing people run to. Building an attrition model, I would give an example as like finishing medical school and deciding to cure cancer in your first job, right? Like it's really easy to predict if someone is going to leave an organization because there's a fairly well recognized set of behaviors people exhibit or things that happen that make people more likely to leave. What's really hard is convincing people to stay.
Yeah.
If it takes someone 8 months to make the decision to leave and you intervene 6 months into that process, you actually have to convince them to change their mindset on the organization, the culture, the problems that they're facing. So I think there's a big difference between companies who talk about the success of predicting employee turnover and the companies that succeed in reducing employee turnover. So it's not one of my favorite topics. In fact, it's my least favorite topic, unless it's in a really niche area on a really small set of employees where it can be really targeted and, as I said, transparent to them.
Exactly. No, thanks a lot. And we have just a few minutes left. And if there are any questions from our audience, please write on the chat. But maybe lastly, Greg, we can talk about who we can recommend or which resources we can recommend for audience to follow. And we mentioned about David Green. I'm also following him on LinkedIn and read the books with Jonathan Ferrari as well. So are there any other resources would you suggest?
The way I think about it is slightly different. The best way to learn about people analytics from the community is to become part of the community, right? Like if you're doing a project at work, write it on LinkedIn, share it. You might only get 5 people comment, but there'll be 5 great connections that you can learn from and you can share with. So I don't think it's about who to follow, though there's amazing people like David and Jonathan and hundreds of other people. But it's more to start building a community, go to a drinks event, go to a networking event, write a quick summary of some cool research that you've done and post it, and build the human connections that will then enable you to quickly solve problems, find the right employee, get inspired, all that kind of cool stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Learning from each other because these are the real cases that we share. And we have a few questions. So one is from Swapna. Are there any examples? Would you be able to share examples of analytics which measures biases? It's a great topic. I'm currently working on the D&I space. I'm wondering on measuring biases. Thanks, Swapna, for the question.
Yeah, it's something I think I don't have any specific case studies. We haven't been doing any work in this area recently, but I know lots of smart people who work in this area. So I'm happy to share offline
Okay.
and connect her with some smart people who can tell us some stories in a lot more detail than I'd be able to do in one
Okay,
second.
okay, perfect. Great questions. And Didam asked, how necessary do you see the use of Python in HR analytics processes? Do we need to use the system or something?
Everyone's using Python, right? Python and R, kind of the standard tools. As I said, I can't use it. I've got smart people who I'm lucky enough to work with who do this stuff. But it
Mhm.
depends on your role. Like, are you the person who talks to the business? Are you the person who manages the data? Are you the person who prepares the dashboards? Are you the person who builds the model and tests the model? There's a whole lot of different roles. We don't all need to be technical geniuses. I think it's about working out where your superpower is, where your passion is, and then focusing on being awesome at that part of the overall process.
Yeah, okay. So thanks, Didam, for the question. So it's needed. And Nurullah, my main problem is the number of headcount, approximately 500 employees. When I try to run the data analytics model, my reliability rate is very low due to the low number of employees. How can I eliminate this situation?
I think at the moment the big interest is in building synthetic data and seeing if the large language models can build you data that is similar to your organization that is will help you to build a bigger data set to be able to build that kind of thing. Again, it's a little bit beyond my area of expertise, but I'm
Mhm.
happy to hook up with smart people if anyone wants to reach out to me directly.
Okay, okay. Nurullah, please reach out to Greg directly and also Swapna. But thanks a lot for this useful 30 minutes. So thanks all the questions as well from the audience. It was really, really nice to hear from them too. And Greg, please continue to share your case studies and insights with us. So these are very helpful because I know you work with many different companies and help them and to use the people analytics in a much smarter way. Thanks, Greg, again.
Thanks for the opportunity. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks to all audience. See you next time. Bye bye.